Hey YouTube, so today I wanted to get started again on the Bobcat. I got all the parts back from the machine shop, so I just want to start getting these cleaned up and put back together. But unfortunately, before I can do any of that, I got some maintenance to do on a couple of these trucks. This one here, I'm having an issue. It sounded like a dead battery, but every time you take a charge, it's got a full charge and everything. And then once in a while the starter doesn't work unless you go underneath and jump it. So it looks like it needs a new starter, or at least a power wire. But I have a new starter for it, so I'm going to go ahead and install it, because this one under here is pretty old and pretty crappy. It's probably original from '99. So we're going to do that. And then I also ordered, don't know if I'll do it today, but I ordered a new exhaust manifold. And as you can see, if any of you guys with the V10s or the 5/8 know, the exhaust studs are notorious for breaking off on these. But as you can see, this has got the oversized studs. So this has already had it gone through and redone. And actually, the other day I put a wrench on a couple of these nuts and they came right loose. So it doesn't look like I'll be having an issue pulling the exhaust off to take care of that. I might have an issue here at the Y pipe. I'm not quite sure. I haven't tried that yet, but try to loosen that so I can pull this exhaust manifold off so I can put a new gasket in there. But before we do any of that, we're going to climb under here and take a look at the starter. And today is the worst day to do it because it's 6 degrees out and it is freezing cold. So this is a new starter that I got the other day from my local Advanced Auto. So we're going to climb under here and see what we got going on. Alright, here's our culprit right here. As you can see, the power wire going to it is really green, really corroded and fried. Probably has something to do with it. The power going to the solenoid is the same way. And on these old trucks, actually not old trucks, any of these trucks, if you're having an issue where you turn the key and this is clicking, you're not getting any power to the starter, it means the solenoid, it might be getting power to the solenoid, but it's not sending it to the starter to engage. So you just take a screwdriver or a wrench and touch this terminal to this terminal while the ignition is turned on. Make sure you're in park, and you'll get it to jump start. So we're gonna go ahead and take this off. Looks like 3 bolts. Oh boy, those are really bad. But let's get to it. Alright, with the bolts cracked loose on this truck, for some reason they're 10mm heads. I could swear they're 13 on the last V10 I did, but there's one here. There's one right on the corner here. And then there's one behind it. It's kind of tough to get to. If you feel around with it with an extension, you get to it. Also, if you go outside the truck and look over the frame rail, you can see it. So you might be able to put the wrench on from the top if you can't feel it from down here, and then just crawl into the truck with the wrench on it and loosen it. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen these bolts. But before I get them all the way loose, I got to take these power wires off and let them hang. So I'll be right back. Alright, well the starter's out, but I don't like these 2 wires here. So they're connected to a solenoid up under the hood. I'm going to go ahead and disconnect it, take it up to the parts store and get a new one. Once I get it off, I'll look at it on the bench, but that big wire there where you see the connector going to the wire, a lot of those wires are severed. It's all green and nasty, so it's definitely a bad connection. It might be the cause of the entire problem, but since I have a new starter, I'm going to go ahead and get this wire. So I'll be right back. Alright, that starter, the solenoid for the starter is located under the hood here behind the passenger side battery. So it's just these 2 wires right here. Pop them off. It's one single wire harness. Goes around, there's a couple of zip ties, but it should come up pretty easy. So let me grab that. Alright, so it turns out this is going to be a nightmare to take out. This is the This is the wire that goes over to the solenoid. Now, one of the main wires comes off that solenoid. Where is it? Right here. Comes off the solenoid, comes over here, goes up this loom, and is this cable right here, going to the positive, okay? The other wire here runs down along and goes to the starter. It's all in this loom and everything, and I'm just, you know, it's freezing cold out here. I don't really want to take this all apart right now. So what I've done instead is I pulled the wiring from the starter and I brought it up to the front here and took off the old ends. I'm just going to strip these wires back to clean wire. I'm going to go get two new ends and have some shrink tubing, and I'm going to solder the new ends on and shrink tube it on there and make it back to the way it was, because to get this all out of here is just going to be a pain. And these ends, when they're cleaned up, are going to be fine, and this is of course is fine. So rather than go spend the $100 on a whole new wire harness thing, I'm just going to go ahead and just repair the ends. So I'm going to go put this back together somewhat and run up to the hardware store or the parts store and go get those two new ends. So I'll be back. And of course I didn't get shrink tubing big enough for this end. It doesn't fit over. So I'm going to solder that on and put electrical tape on it and just make sure it's got a good solder joint. So first thing I did was just dip the wire in flux, and now we'll just put the end on it, heat this up, and then drop in the solder. So I'm gonna need like 7 hands to do this, so I'm gonna have to take one of them away that's holding the camera. So I'll be back. Alright, that's how I did that. I just put heat on the end of the joint here and held the solder to the end here, and once it got hot enough to melt the solder, it just drew it all in the cup. So I just fed it in there for, I don't know, like an inch and a half, and then that should be enough to get all the way in there. I'm just gonna let this cool down and clean this end up and tape it off real good. And they didn't have the right end for that, it's just a crimp end. So I'm going to crimp it on there, but I'm also going to solder it. So I'll be back. Alright, those two are done. Let's get under there and hook up the starter. Alright, with the starter back in, I put some never sees on those bolts. They actually went in really nice and easy. Even the top one, I had it in the starter hole when I put the starter up there, and was able to just take a peek on the side here and get the socket on it. Spin it in by hand and then just tighten them up a little bit. You don't have to tighten them super tight. Like I said, they're only 10mm head on those bolts, so you can snap them pretty easy. So you just snug them up pretty good. And now I got these two wires fed back through. I'm going to hook them up, and then we'll hook the battery back up and see if it runs. Alright, battery's hooked up. That solenoid's hooked up. Everything else is good. Starter's hooked up. Let's go see if this thing starts. Come on. Alright, perfect. Key was stuck there. The wheel must have been turned or locked or whatever, but fired up. But now you can hear that I have exhaust manifold leak. Whew, what's going on here? I zoomed in, sorry about that. Okay. Oh, I just loosened one of these just to make sure I could. But I got a manifold, exhaust manifold leak.